Hey everybody, today we're going to do a video that's going to cover actually sort of two topics. This is going to be an update on what I've been working on with this lovely Land Raider from Days Gone By with Rogue Trader that I have updated with some new weapons to bring it up to specs for the Chaos Army that I'm working on right now. A very corroded looking Chaos Army. So just to go over what I've got so far, we've got some old sponsons from some Lehman Rust tanks, and I've clipped the existing las cannons off of them and converted them to twin-linked las cannons using the twin-linked las off of some normal Land Raiders. And then on the front here, we've got a twin-linked heavy bolter that I built out of some of the ones off the front of Lehman Russ's and some plastic card for the sheathing. And then I've also made a cupola up here with a little guy, Cast Marine, popping his head out to check, I guess, firing arcs or some such thing. I don't know why you'd stick your head out of a perfectly good tank, but he's doing it. And we've also got a missile launcher up here that is our Havoc launcher. These are going to be painted separately because I'd like to get to all of the interior details here easily without having to worry about getting paint or the like on the cupola. So, that out of the way, the next thing that this video is going to be for is I've gotten a couple of requests for using those pigment powders that I talked about in the previous video, the ones that I made out of the pastels. So what I thought I'd do is start working on this one, and we can discuss how there are a few methods, but some various methods for applying these pigment powders to your models to give that corroded effect. So the first one that I'm starting out with is called Nougat. And it's sort of a medium brown, nothing really special, it just kind of looks like dirt. It's going to be the basic, or the, I guess the older corrosion that's gotten really dark on our surfaces here. And so let's go over one method here that we can do. The two things you're going to need for this are your pigment powders, whether you're going to make them like I showed you, or if you're going to buy them, and some rubbing alcohol. You can get it at anywhere, at a grocery store, at a pharmacy, wherever. It's cheap. It's probably less than $1 for a big, 16-ounce bottle of it. So the first method is just dry application. So here's what we're going to do. I'm taking this old frayed brush here, and we're just going to take some of this powder here. It will ruin your brushes, so don't use this on any good brushes. So we've just got some here on our brush, and let's come to an area where we might see some corrosion, places where water might sit. You got to think about where you want to put your corrosion before you just start throwing it on there. You can always take it back off with a little bit of alcohol, but it's going to be easier and quicker and more efficient if you know where it should go before you start laying it down. So just think about where water might pool or where it might hang if you're thinking about under surfaces. So any upward facing surfaces where you might see some water just laying there. So here's what we got so far. We've just applied a little bit here, and we've got these surfaces up here are all covered in this dust now. Now, if you don't do anything to it, it's just going to rub right off. It doesn't have any staying power, really. You could try and grind it in some and essentially use it as though it were a pastel, but the easiest way to take care of this is to get a little bit of this alcohol. We're just going to pour a little into this clear tray here. This is just a privateer press packing tray. I'm sure you guys will recognize that. we'll just load up a little bit on the brush here, and we'll dab over all the areas that we did. And this will essentially just sort of melt it into the paint that's already on the model. Yeah. So, and that'll dry really quickly, and it'll be fairly well secured onto that area. Now, it does have a tendency to sort of wash it out a little bit. So I know it's difficult to see here. This is such a dark model right now. But once this dries, you'll probably have to do that a couple of times. Now, the next method, instead of applying dry powder and then adding the alcohol on top, you can just add some pigment and alcohol together, and you can see down here we've got a nice sort of muddy mixture here. Make sure to mix it together fairly well. We don't want any big chunks or anything in there. So if it's ground correctly, you shouldn't really have to worry about big chunky things. So if you're looking for a light corrosion, this is probably what you want. I'm really sorry about the lighting here, but it's just not wanting to cooperate with me. So alright, so our next option here, we'll go ahead and do this over this area because I want some pretty heavy corrosion. So and I know this is looking rather exaggerated here. It's looking like we're just sort of globbing it on, and to an extent we are. That is what we're doing. But once this dries, I'll show you that we're not going to leave all of this on there. A lot of it's going to come back off. We're going to take a Q-tip or piece of paper towel or whatever you have handy, and we're going to dab some alcohol back over these places again and try to wipe off the vast majority of this in at least the high points. All the places where it's likely to get scuffed and rubbed and the rust comes off, those are the places that our Q-tip or our paper towel is going to hit. So, all right, there you go. So we're going to let this dry, and I'll be back in just a moment. For the most part, everything's dry now, so we've got this lovely rust coat on just about everything here. I've left some areas bare. This area up here, because we're going to be adding the copla up there. But for the most part, everything else is just slathered in this rust mixture. Now, like I said before, not all of that is going to be staying. So here's how we're going to remove some of that strategically. I've still got this vat of alcohol down here. In fact, a lot of that has dried up now in just the few minutes that I worked on the rest of that off camera. So we've got our cotton swab here, and we're just going to start wiping down some of these areas to remove it from the high points. I will smear some of it around a little bit, but for the most part what we're trying to do is remove it where this can reach, because where that can reach, we're sort of assuming other things can reach, like, you know, enemy troopers or other things that might abrade the surface of this tank. So, trying not to leave any really obvious streaking in this part. Yeah, there we go. So I'm using the other side that isn't completely soaked in alcohol and pigments to sort of wipe down after I wet an area again. And that helps to remove some of the excess pigments from those areas. So I'm going to go ahead and do this to the rest of it and let this dry, and we'll take a look at it in just a minute.